I stopped begging my wife for intimacy after years of, "I'm too tired." My self-transformation forced her to finally face what she'd done to our marriage. But by the time she wanted me again, I was no longer hers to lose. That I used to think intimacy in a marriage faded quietly, like the dimming of a bedside lamp at the end of a long day. What I never expected was how it could disappear while both people were still pretending the light was on. My wife, Claire, and I had been married for 8 years. Not a flashy couple, not dramatic, not the type to scream at each other in grocery store parking lots. We were the stable ones. The ones friends said looked solid, mature, secure. But stability can hide a lot. Like how for the last 3 years, every time I reached for her hand in bed, she'd roll away. Like how "I'm exhausted" slowly turned into "not tonight," and eventually became "can we not do this?" "I'm stressed." At first, I backed off. I didn't want to be that clingy husband in some cliché marriage meme. I respected her boundaries, her feelings, her stress from work. I tried initiating less, then barely at all, then not at all. But intimacy isn't just physical. It's connection. It's being wanted. And I hadn't felt wanted in a long time. 6 months ago, I tried to initiate again. Not sex, just closeness. I slid my arm around her waist while we watched TV. She physically stiffened. "Stop," she muttered, eyes glued to the screen. "I'm not in the mood for you pawing at me tonight." It wasn't the words. It was the tone, irritation, like my touch was something she needed to deal with. I said nothing and moved my arm back. She didn't notice, or pretended she didn't. An hour later, she was laughing at something on her phone, texting someone who clearly didn't exhaust her. I wasn't angry, not sad, just quiet. A strange shift happened in me that night. Something settled, like a decision I didn't know I'd already made. I didn't try to touch her again after that. Didn't try to kiss her first. Didn't try to initiate anything. Didn't ask why she stayed up texting for hours while I lay beside her. I stopped chasing. When intimacy dies, you either shrivel or evolve. I chose evolution. Not to win her back. Those days were over. But because I suddenly saw how much of myself I'd lost trying to be patient, understanding, endlessly supportive. So I started fixing what I could control. I joined a gym. Started therapy to deal with years of quiet resentment. Cleaned up my diet. Grew a beard she always said she'd hate. Bought clothes that fit the new body I was building. Started walking with confidence instead of apologizing for existing. It wasn't a midlife crisis. It was a rebirth. And people noticed. Especially Claire. It was a Saturday morning. I came home from the gym sweaty, tired, but feeling good. Claire was in the kitchen making coffee. She looked up and did a double take. "Wow," she said slowly. "You've been working out." I nodded. "Yeah." "For how long?" "For months." She blinked. "You didn't tell me," she said, almost accusing. "You never asked," I replied. In her face, something flickered there. Something I hadn't seen in years. Awareness. Maybe even panic. That night, she came to bed early. Not just early. She scooted closer to me, her leg brushing mine. And for the first time in 3 years, she initiated a kiss. But I didn't kiss her back. Not out of spite, but because the moment felt empty. Like she wasn't kissing me. She was kissing the idea of losing me. She pulled back, confused. "What's wrong?" she whispered. I looked at her gently. "Nothing's wrong," I said. "It's just, I don't think we should pick up where we left off before fixing what broke us in the first place." She stared at me like I'd spoken another language. I didn't give her more. I turned off the light. And for the first time in years, she was the one lying awake while I fell asleep. Claire started watching me the way someone watches a stranger who looks vaguely familiar. Like she was trying to remember who I used to be and why I no longer matched the picture in her head. It began subtly. She'd hover in doorways while I got dressed, her eyes following the way my shirts fit my shoulders now. She'd ask, "Where are you going?" in a tone that used to be absent from our marriage. Curiosity tinted with insecurity. I didn't hide anything. I also didn't overshare. If she asked, I answered plainly. Gym, therapy, grabbing lunch with coworkers. But I didn't justify myself, didn't explain, didn't apologize. And that shift hit her harder than any argument could have. One night, when I came home later than usual, she was sitting on the couch with her arms crossed. "You could have texted," she said sharply. "I didn't think you'd care," I replied. Her mouth opened, then closed. That was the moment she realized the power dynamic in our marriage had changed, not out of revenge, but out of quiet self-respect she no longer recognized. Later that week, her best friend, Melissa, stopped by for wine. I was heading out as they sat in the living room. When I grabbed my keys, Melissa let out a low whistle. "Damn, look at you," she said, eyes wide. Claire didn't tell me she married a Marvel character. Claire's laugh was higher pitched than usual, forced. "He's been working out," she said quickly. Melissa looked at her, then at me. "Oh, I know," she said. "People at our office have been talking. Apparently, Claire's husband got hot." Claire's face drained of color. I just smiled, nodded, and left. When I returned 2 hours later, the apartment was quiet. Claire was in the bedroom, staring at herself in the mirror with a heavy expression. Her makeup was smudged, her hair slightly undone, as if she had cried. She didn't say anything when I walked in. She just looked at me through the reflection and asked, "Do you still love me?" The question should have felt vulnerable, touching, human, but the timing made it feel like something else. Possessive, panicked, convenient. I didn't answer immediately. I sat down on the edge of the bed and spoke carefully. "I love the woman I married," I said, "but I don't know if she still exists." She turned around sharply, hurt and anger flickering across her face. "What's that supposed to mean?" she snapped. "It means," I said, keeping my tone even, "for years you pushed me away. You shut me out. You treated my affection like a burden. And now that I've stopped begging for crumbs, suddenly you're interested." "That's not fair," she whispered. "Neither was being rejected by my own wife for years," I replied. Silence swallowed the room. She sat down next to me, shoulders shaking slightly. Her hand slid toward mine. "I want to fix this," she said. "I'll try. I swear." "I didn't realize how much you felt abandoned." I pulled my hand away, not dramatically, just gently. "That's the problem," I said. "You didn't realize. Because it didn't affect you." Her eyes filled with tears. For the first time, I saw it clearly. She was terrified, not of losing me specifically, but of losing the version of me who would endlessly try to prove himself to her. She wanted the old me, needy, apologetic, waiting for permission to be loved. She didn't know what to do with the man in front of her now. Over the next weeks, she tried harder. Cooking dinner, asking about my day, touching my arm, trying to cuddle at night, initiating conversations, leaving little notes in my bag. But nothing felt organic. Everything felt like a reaction, not love. Fear, not connection. And with every attempt, I felt myself stepping further back, not out of cruelty, but because I no longer recognized this marriage as something I wanted to save. One night, she finally broke. I came home from the gym late, and she was sitting on the kitchen floor with her back against the cabinets, knees pulled to her chest. Her eyes were red. She looked up at me like she barely recognized me. "I feel like you're punishing me," she said, choking on the words. "Like you're becoming everything I was afraid of. Cold, distant, unreachable." "No," I said softly. "I'm becoming someone who expects to be wanted." Her voice cracked. "I do want you." I shook my head. "You want the security of me, not the man." She didn't deny it. She couldn't, because she finally understood. I hadn't stopped chasing intimacy out of spite. I'd stopped because the man she ignored for years was gone. The man who begged for closeness was gone. The man who tolerated emotional starvation was gone. In his place was someone she didn't know how to love. And for the first time, she realized she might actually lose me. Update 1. Claire didn't crumble overnight. She unraveled in stages. It started with little things, a shaky breath when I grabbed my keys, a too long pause before asking where I was going, a nervous glance when I checked my phone. Then came the emotional slip-ups. One morning, while I was making coffee, she came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. Not a soft, natural hug, a needy, desperate grip. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. I didn't move. "You haven't lost me," I said. But she heard the unspoken second half. "Not yet." She held on tighter, like she could squeeze the old version of me back into existence. When I turned to leave for work, her eyes were red. She didn't kiss me, didn't say "I love you," just whispered, "Come home early tonight, okay?" I didn't promise anything. The turning point came a week later. She asked me to sit down after dinner, her hands trembling as she poured herself a glass of wine. "I need to tell you something," she said. I expected an apology, maybe a confession about her emotional withdrawal, maybe even an explanation for the 3 years of distance. But what came out shattered the last illusion I had about our marriage. "It wasn't that I didn't want you," she said quietly. "It's that I didn't feel attractive anymore. I felt old, tired, stuck." And whenever you try to get close, it reminded me of how far I'd fallen. I blinked. That wasn't what I expected. Not even close. So instead of telling me, I said, "You push me away?" She nodded quickly, like a child caught in something shameful. "I didn't want you to see me like that. If I kept saying I'm tired, I thought, I don't know, maybe you'd stop trying before you realized how much I hated myself." She started crying then. Really crying. Not the controlled, performative tears she'd sometimes used to end arguments. "These last few months," she said, voice trembling, "watching you change, watching you become someone confident and proud of himself, it made me realize how much I wasted. How much I let die." Her hands gripped her wine glass so hard I thought it might crack. "I thought if I ignored intimacy long enough, you'd eventually give up on it. I never thought you'd give up on me." I let her speak. I didn't interrupt, didn't comfort, didn't correct. I just listened. When she finally looked at me, there was fear in her eyes I'd never seen before. "Do you still want this marriage?" she asked in a whisper. I didn't answer immediately, because the truth was hard, heavy, and slow. "I'm not sure," I finally said. "I'm not sure we want the same marriage. I wanted partnership, support, intimacy. You wanted distance." "I didn't want distance," she said quickly. "I wanted safety." "And now?" I asked. "I want you," she said, voice breaking. "I want us." But she wanted the version of me who stayed no matter how neglected he felt. The man I used to be. He was gone. 2 days later, something happened that shifted everything even further. I got invited to a coworker's birthday dinner. Nothing fancy, just a group outing. I almost didn't go, but therapy had been pushing me to build a life outside the house. Claire watched me get dressed, eyes scanning every detail. The fitted shirt, the clean haircut, the confidence she didn't recognize. "You look good," she said, voice flat. "Jealous." "Who's going?" "Coworkers," I replied. "Any women?" she asked. "Yes." She flinched like she'd been slapped. "When will you be home?" "I don't know." She swallowed, nodded once, and forced a smile that looked painful. I left without giving reassurance. At dinner, I laughed, ate good food, talked, existed beyond the four walls of our house. For the first time in years, I wasn't the guy waiting for permission to feel alive. When I returned home at midnight, Claire was sitting on the couch in the dark, her face streaked with makeup and dried tears. She looked up at me like she was bracing for impact. "Are you leaving me?" she whispered. I sat down across from her. "I'm not leaving tonight," I said, "but I'm not staying the way I was." She broke again, quietly, silently, shoulders shaking. She finally understood. It wasn't another woman she should fear. It was the possibility that her husband had rebuilt himself into someone who no longer needed to be needed. Someone who wouldn't settle for being unwanted ever again. Someone she couldn't control with silence, distance, or excuses. Someone she might already have lost. Final update. 3 weeks after the night, I came home to find her crying on the couch. Our marriage hit the point of no return. Not with yelling. Not with betrayal. Not with some scandalous reveal. It ended with clarity. Clarity so sharp it cut through every excuse she had ever used. It began on a Wednesday. Claire suggested we go on a date. Her idea, not mine. She dressed up, did her hair, even put on perfume I hadn't smelled on her in years. She reached for my hand as we walked to the restaurant. I let her, not because I felt the old closeness, but because I wanted to understand whether what remained between us was love or fear of losing convenience. Throughout dinner, she kept making small confessions. "I should have talked to you. I let my insecurities become your punishment. I took your kindness for granted. I didn't think you'd ever stop loving me the way you used to." And I believed her. But apology isn't the same as connection. Regret isn't the same as love. Fear isn't the same as intimacy. When we got home, she touched my arm. "Can we try again tonight?" she asked softly. And for the first time in years, the offer wasn't met with guilt or pressure inside me. Just emptiness. "No," I said gently. "We're trying to fill a hole with the wrong pieces." She stepped back like she'd been hit. "You don't want me anymore?" she whispered. "That's not it," I said. "I don't want the version of us that destroyed me." She froze. And that's when I said what I'd been holding back for months. I begged for affection. I begged for closeness. I begged for something real. And you gave me nothing. Not even a chance to understand why. Now that I've stopped begging, you suddenly want to fix everything. But you're not doing this out of love. You're doing it because you feel me slipping away. She covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming. That's not true, she managed. It is, I said quietly. And deep down, you know it. Her legs gave out a little, and she sat on the edge of the bed. I never thought you'd stop wanting me, she said. I thought, maybe, you'd always be there. That was the problem, I said. For years, she believed I had no breaking point. She had mistaken my patience for permanence, my devotion for dependence, my love for something unconditional, unshakable, eternal. Then she saw my transformation. She saw people notice me. She saw my confidence return. She saw I wasn't anchored to her anymore. She saw I could leave. And suddenly, she wanted me again. Not because she rediscovered passion or connection, but because her safety net had grown wings. That night, I slept in the guest room. She cried herself to sleep in hours. The next morning, she looked hollow, soft, defeated. She didn't lash out, didn't beg, didn't manipulate. She simply asked, "Is there any part of you that wants to stay?" I took a long breath. "There's a part of me that remembers what we were," I said. "But the part of me that lived through what we became, he's tired. And he doesn't trust that we won't end up exactly where we were." She nodded slowly, painfully. "So we're done?" she asked. "We're over," I said softly. She closed her eyes and released a quiet sob. Not dramatic, not performative. Just heartbreak. Real heartbreak. Not for our love, but for the realization that she pushed away a man who had once been hers unconditionally. And now he belonged to himself, that we divorced quietly 2 months later. No fighting. No lawyers ripping us apart. No scandals. Just two people sitting in a room, signing the end of something that had been dying for years before either of us admitted it. After we signed, she asked, "Is there someone else?" "No," I said honestly. "There never needed to be. Losing myself was enough." Her face crumpled at those words. Because she finally understood. It wasn't another woman she had been competing with. It was the man I became. A man who no longer accepted being unwanted. A man who didn't beg for closeness but expected mutual connection. A man who loved deeply once and lost himself for it, and refused to do it again. 8 months have passed since the divorce. I'm still working on myself. Still healing. Still growing. I'm dating slowly, casually, with intention, with boundaries I never had before. Claire reached out once, months after the divorce, with a message that wasn't angry, bitter, or manipulative. Just honest. "I'm sorry I didn't love you when it mattered. You deserved better." And she was right. I did. But now, I finally do.